Well, we're off for our final adventure in the Rivian. Unfortunately, this adventure for us is not what we expected. We are just over a month of ownership, of which about half the time was in the service center. And for a variety of reasons, which we'll explain in more detail, we are trading it off on a Chevy Suburban today. Okay, you ready?
It feels like a roller coaster. It's terrible when they hit your head on the side.
So we're pulling the tape off the window that we were trying to do to get rid of the wind noise. It worked some, but it didn't resolve the problem. Again, Rivian doesn't acknowledge that there is a problem, even though many owners out there on the forums have that wind noise problems, mainly on the driver's side, a little bit on the passenger side. A bigger concern is I think we're getting just a slight amount of half-shaft clicking from the drive axles, which lots of other people are reporting problems with. It is warranted by Rivian, but there isn't a known fix, and just a little bit hard to know what to do. So here's our new Suburban sitting next to us, and we're going to go in and make the trade. We're on the way home in the new Suburban here, and so the main issues it came down to with the Rivian largely relate to being so far from the service center and the challenges we had getting the vehicle serviced, having to go get rental cars, return the rental cars, extend the rental cars. Really was a real hassle, and just raised concerns about the future. At one point they said we'd be responsible for getting the vehicle back to us after they fixed it, which would have been basically take an entire day to go retrieve the vehicle if they have to fix it. They ultimately did cover returning it to us, but that caused concern. A lot of people are anxiety about the range of their EV and charging. That really was not the issue. Rivian really performed well in that manner. It charged well at home. The range was pretty reliable. We did long distance trips in the cold. Watching other people's reports out there though really made us concerned. Other people who are having the vehicle go down on them, having problems with being stranded with it, and the issue involving the drive axles is also concerning. We weren't really sure, but we were thinking ours possibly at 2,300 miles were beginning to click a little bit, and know that's a known issue. And just worried that even since it's been known for like a year now, and it seems they're still producing them with axles that have that problem, and that would certainly see something that would need for future service and trips to the service center. So that's another issue. Another issue was that the third row, despite how it was advertised and how the videos seem to portray it on YouTube, it really is too small for larger kids or adults, and when you have anybody back there moving the second row up, it really becomes tight, and for a family of 6 it just really made it not what we wanted. So again, we were very fortunate to buy the Rivian at a reduced price, so we were able to get all of our money back out of it. They happened to just get allocated this Suburban a few days ago. It's a base Suburban, which is what we like. None of the fancy features or anything. Just a real simple, basic vehicle. Obviously, we're not going to get the fuel economy we were looking at with the Rivian. But with the amount of money that I was able to get from the Rivian and the deal we got on this, we were actually able to get this in at a real affordable price, which should make the cost of mile per mile actually come out fairly similar to the Rivian. I haven't done all the math yet, considering our trade of our truck we traded for the Rivian and the loss we took on that, but then we did gain quite a bit on the value of the Rivian into the Suburban. So I think this Suburban ended up costing just slightly more than the 22 Silverado we had before the Rivian. Should give feedback on their customer service. They were absolutely outstanding and friendly, and negative with that is that you never get to talk to the same person twice, and so you often have to tell your story again. The towing partners that they have that are supposedly Rivian certified are not Rivian certified. They do get videos, and the partner who eventually picked ours up was very good and knowledgeable, but he really on his own had looked up the videos and watched them and wasn't necessarily trained ahead of time. But the process of calling for days and days of waiting for pickup and tow companies not coming, rather than Rivian's own providers picking up, was really frustrating. So we thought we'd talk a little bit about why we decided to go back to the Suburban from the R1S and some of the costs involved with that. As we had discussed earlier in our videos, we were able to get the R1S at the early price and then essentially make a profit off selling it. That is not why we sold it. Largely, as we discussed, it's because of the issues around reliability and the solvency of Rivian as a company, and whether or not the company is going to make it or not, were some of our biggest concerns, just making it hard to know what the right answer was. So now we are 1 month into ownership of the Suburban. It has given us 0 issues. We put just about 2,500 miles on in that first month, and we do drive a lot. That is part of the reason that was driving us towards Rivian, was to get something with better fuel efficiency. The advantages of the Suburban over the Rivian are, of course, functionality-wise, this is much larger. It can tow much, actually it can tow about the same amount, but you feel more secure in a larger vehicle towing heavy things. And you don't have to worry about range in this. You just stop, fill up, you don't have to look for chargers and plan around the chargers and spend the time charging. So as performance goes, the Rivian obviously way outperforms this vehicle. 0 to 60 on this is probably an unknown 7-8 seconds, maybe a little longer. This is the 5.3 liter in here, which is not the bigger engine. So as you saw in our video, we were able to do 0 to 60 in 3.39 seconds on snow-covered roads with the off-road tires and fully with 4 people in the car. That's just unheard of performance. Handling wise, Rivian was okay. It was good. Sport was pretty rough on our frost-heaved roads around here. With the off-road tires, it handled well. It drove best when you drove it hard. If you wanted to make it perform, it would perform. But for everyday driving, it was not that impressive, other than it was just easy to drive. Hard to get into parking spots. You have to think about where you're going to maneuver it, but it rides like a dream on the highway. Handles the bumps and soaks everything up. We've had significant snow with it. It does just fine getting through deep snow. Ground clearance on this, I don't know what it is, but it certainly isn't 15 inches, but it's more than sufficient. The Rivian, however, had a very unique style. We really enjoyed that style. Really enjoyed how it looked. The driver and passenger seat were comfortable to ride in. The heat worked well. And as we mentioned, the range was very good. So talking about costs of vehicles and cost comparisons, I'm going to make some assumptions in this prices and costs I talk about here. It's based on the cost of owning a vehicle in Minnesota, which has relatively high tab fees based on the cost of the vehicle. It's the cost of insuring the vehicle. It's the cost of the fuel to operate the vehicle and insurance, basically trying to get in the total cost of ownership. Based on a 7 cent per kilowatt hour rate, I had the Rivian costing 45.5 cents per mile, or $45,000 to drive 100,000 miles. The Suburban at $3.30 per gallon comes in at 47 cents. The value that I put on this Suburban is based on the value of what it costs to buy our 2022 Silverado, then sell that Silverado to buy the Rivian, and then sell the Rivian and put the equity of that into this Suburban. So it's a complicated transaction, which does make the actual cost of this Suburban less than the actual retail price. So this 47 cents a mile is based on our own personal experience, not necessarily what if someone were to go buy this vehicle. So essentially it's $2,000 more to have the Suburban over 100,000 miles versus the Rivian. I did do a comparison looking at a Lightning XLT. It would come in at 41 cents a mile. And I also looked at an Outlander PHEV, which comes in around 43 cents a mile. The problem with the Outlander PHEV, even though it has a third row, is that our family has outgrown that. We've had 3 of those. It was a great electric option to have and very affordable and reliable, but really we just don't fit anymore. And that was one of the big downsides to the Rivian, is it just, despite how it was advertised, it's just a little too small for what our family needs and to do, as Rivian says, the adventures that we want to take. We were really feeling like we couldn't get those adventures out of the Rivian. I should also mention that I put in a $45,000 residual value for the Rivian and a $30,000 residual value for the Suburban at 100,000 miles. The Lightning, for comparison, I had a $30,000 residual value, and the Outlander PHEV I was putting in a $20,000 residual value. Those numbers are based on Blue Book values of looking at a few years old vehicles, and as we know, car prices have fluctuated greatly, so it's hard to estimate these things, so it's just a best estimate. Another point to bring up is that what are the potential problems with a newer Suburban like this? This vehicle does have active fuel management that has been a plague for GM. This is a newer version of it. I'm hoping that they have that worked out, but that could be a problem in the future. It's the 10-speed automatic transmission, not the 8-speed. There's a lot of issues with the 8-speed. Again, I'm hoping that these things have been worked out. It's under warranty for a while, easier to service. I'm hoping that within that first 100,000 mile equation that works out okay. But it is always a concern to consider in this. Also, we've had, I would have to count, but probably 7 or 8 Suburbans in the past. All of them were either GMT 400s or GMT 800s, which are the older generation Suburbans. Everything preceding 2006. Those have been great vehicles for me. They get worse fuel economy than this, but obviously the purchase price is much lower. At this point in time though, however, it's basically buying something pre-2006 is such an old vehicle. To get something reliable that isn't going to require a lot of maintenance is really not realistic. And I didn't want, with the Suburbans, especially those made from 2007 to 2012, which are prone to lots of issues, I didn't want to deal with one of those. So in summary, the Rivian it seems to be a wonderful vehicle. I think in some ways over-engineered and too complicated, making it too expensive for the masses, and I'm just concerned that Rivian as a company isn't going to make it. It's an amazing vehicle for those who are able to have the opportunity to use it to its full potential. For us, this is a more practical vehicle that's going to meet our needs a lot more and hopefully not give us as many problems, and we can service it just down the road. We're probably not done with electric vehicles. I probably will try something else again in the future. It's really hard to know who to trust or what company to go with. I don't particularly like any of the Teslas. There's nothing that fits our family or our needs. The Model Y and Model 3 are too small for a second car. I am interested in the Chevy Equinox with the price they're listing when it comes out, but it's still hard to know if that's a good choice, and there's a lot of issues around GM Electric that need to be solved before I'm ready to jump on board with that. Thanks for watching.